Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey here, and this is going to be my official review for the Flash movie. Yeah, we're finally here. It's almost here. Not sure exactly when this video is going to be coming out. I'm recording this review about about a day and a half after I've watched the movie. But embargo date, not too sure exactly when the review will be allowed to go out. So yeah, but I'm recording it like a day or two after I've seen the film. Now, this is my official non-spoiler review. However, disclaimer, as I've sort of hinted at before, I did see this movie about a month before it's coming out, thanks to I was able to go see it thanks to Warner Brothers. So I did see the version that was shown at like CinemaCon, and I think is being shown at fan screenings in about a week and a half from now. So it's not the complete full movie, but it's way more than that's actually needed to give a non-spoiler thought on the movie. Now, for a full spoiler review, we'll wait until the actual movie properly comes out. We see exactly what was on screen, but I can give you my full non-spoiler thoughts here of what I thought about the film that I got to see. So, yeah. But yeah, just to make sure, I will refrain from any sort of spoilery thoughts or spoiler discussions until the full movie comes out in the middle of June, and then we'll do another video, another review specifically on that side of things. Now, the first thing I do want to get at in this review is Flashpoint. Now, Flashpoint is a big thing around this film, how it's being used and everything like that. And without spoiling exact moments and exact references or specific things that happen in the movie that are spoilery, the concept of Flashpoint is used, which you should be able to get from the trailer and from the various promo material. That we're not getting the big Flashpoint thing from the comics and the Flashpoint Paradox film, like the animated movie and stuff like that. We're getting the concept of Flashpoint used, where Barry goes back, stops his mother from dying, everything like that. And then, well, the timeline goes into a bit of some disarray, if you want to put it. So they're using that concept in the context of the DCU. And to me, I think it's handled pretty damn well. And you might be wondering, are there any like negatives I have with the movie or any flaws? I do, and I will bring those up towards the end of the video. And one of them maybe ties into Flashpoint, but maybe it's just the general entry point into this film, which we'll talk about later in the video. But yeah, in regards to how the Flashpoint concept is used in regards to the context of the DCU or the DCEU and the just DC films history as a whole, I think it's pretty well done. I have really no major complaints there. Though I can see some people being very annoyed, like, hey, you used the Flashpoint concept but didn't use the story from the comics. And yeah, I can see people being a bit disappointed by that, but for me, I didn't expect them to do that. So as long as the concept was handled pretty well, which it is, then I'd be pretty happy with it. But in regards to the specific characters or actors and stuff throughout this film, I do have to start with Ezra Miller. Now, I'm not going to talk about any of the stuff that's happening outside of the film. We're just containing ourselves within the film. And I have to say, from beginning to end of this film, Ezra Miller carries it. It's actually pretty crazy. I wasn't expecting it. Now, I've always thought Ezra has been a pretty good actor, but never really, at least in regards to the role of the Flash, was never given the proper opportunity to shine, whether it was the two Justice League movies or those random cameos throughout. Nothing really to shine and say, hey, they can do this job pretty well. Now, Ezra Miller is a miscast for Barry Allen. We've known that. It's nothing new. But Ezra Miller still shapes their own form of the Flash, and I guess to an extent the Barry Allen character throughout this film, where you're motivated with them, you want them to succeed, you're along with the ride and the emotions, the thrills, the fun side, the powers, everything like that. And Ezra Miller does a really good job with it. Ezra does carry on a pretty similar version of the character we did see in the Justice League films, like very same like mannerisms, which makes you think that maybe he's just playing Ezra, or Ezra's just playing Ezra. But yeah, I think Ezra does a really good job throughout the movie in different elements, with its comedy, emotions, the action side, just the acting in general. Really, really well done. And it's sort of a shame what's happened outside of the movie, because I think a lot of people will be like sort of like rooting for Ezra. And some might still be, but I'm just saying, like, as a whole, like, most people are going to see the film. So yeah, Ezra does a really good job and carries it from beginning to end, and also is playing two characters, the main Barry and our younger Barry, throughout the film. Now, of course, we do have two Batmen throughout this film. We do have the Ben Affleck Batman. I must say, this is the best Ben Affleck's Batman has been in film, though it's brief, which isn't too much of a spoiler. I think most of you would know that. It's brief, but he's really, really good in his roles as Batman and Bruce Wayne in the short parts that he's in this film. And sort of a shame that it looks like we might not get any more of him, because I think he saved his best till last. I think he had said in an interview that he had the most fun doing the Flash as Batman, and felt like he actually found who Batman was, or his Batman was. And he wasn't lying, because I really loved his Batman from what we saw on screen in this movie. So yeah, that's one thing you have to look forward to. And he goes pretty full on Batman. Probably the coolest Batman stuff you see him do. And of course, the other Batman in this film is Michael Keaton. And do I have to say anymore? It's Michael Keaton back as goddamn Batman. And look, there's been that whole thing where, you know, they're not going on with like Michael Keaton being the Batman, like he was meant to be in Batgirl, and then there's gonna be like a Batman Beyond thing, and everyone's like, okay, well, do we really want to see this like old Batman? Once you see this film, you're like, I want old Batman. I want that old Batman. I want to see more of that old Batman and some more old Batman movies or old Batman guest roles or old Batman cameos. You'd want to see it. Michael Keaton is awesome. He's just awesome as Batman. Felt like he never left the role. You can tell he's having a ball being back. And it's maybe a shame we won't see him again in the Cave and Calle after this film. But if this was the last time we see him, at least we got to see him one more time, since we haven't seen him since like what, early 90s, 92, I think it was, Batman Returns came out. So yeah, it's really cool. And like I think they canonize it where like Batman 89, Batman Returns happened, but like the other Batmans afterward didn't really play into it. But yeah, just being in the Batcave with the Batmobile, the Batwing, him in the bat suit. We've seen in the trailers all the different bat suits that are there. It's awesome, man. It's awesome having Michael Keaton back. Now, the newcomer in this film is that of Supergirl, played by Sasha Calle, and this is Zor-El, and she is really cool on screen when she's there. Now, she's actually, from the promo material that I think has come out so far, I'm not too sure what's going to come out in the weeks leading up to the film. I'm assuming they'll show more footage, but there hasn't been a ridiculous amount of her. Like, she's definitely got a presence in the promo materials and trailers and stuff like that, but not a ridiculous amount. But from that promo material I saw before going to the film, wasn't sure what to expect. Obviously, she's a newcomer. She was in like soap operas, like TV, like daytime soap operas. So I obviously hadn't had any sort of, crossing over with her in regards to her material from the past. But she's really good in the film. The way that they tie her into some of the Man of Steel stuff and sort of like the changes due to Flashpoint, I think is really interesting. And it's going to be very interesting to see what the public's response to her is as Supergirl, because there is that Supergirl movie that's being planned, but seems like it might not be Sasha Calle. It's going to be someone else. And it wouldn't surprise me too much after this film coming out where people's like, hey, James Gunn, that's your Supergirl. You don't need to do any casting. You've already got her. She was in the Flash movie. Choose her. So it will be interesting, but she does a really, really good job. Her suit, I think, is pretty cool. I think it's in, obviously, some of the trailers and stuff like that. And there's even some set photos, I think. It looks better on screen than it did in the set photos. But yeah, I enjoyed her for what the amount that we got. The amount of screen time we got with Supergirl, I thought was really good. And and she's obviously her. There's a certain scene you'll see, which I don't think we've seen. I think maybe there might have been a bit of it in maybe BVS with Superman, but not to this extent. Like you see how her powers maybe work in a really cool way, like a transformative way. You'll see it when you watch the movie, you'll know what I mean, but I thought it was really cool how they showed it on screen. I do have to mention Henry or Nora Allen. We're dealing with Flashpoint. We're dealing with the death of Nora Allen. Now, the Maribel Verdú, I think her name is, who plays Nora Allen. I think she's really good. I think she's a Mexican actress, I think, but she's really good in the roles in the time we get with her. Of course, she's Nora Allen, so spoil it. She dies. It's Flashpoint. It's in the trailers and everything like that. But her relationship with the younger Barry and even some of the stuff we get in the Flashpoint timeline is really nice. And obviously, her character is that emotional core of the story. And without spoiling specific scenes, there's one moment where you might not cry, but it'll definitely be a tearjerker to most people, or some people at the very least, especially if you have a connection to the Flash storylines. So, she does a really good job. Henry Allen was a recast. Ron Livingston, I think he's the actor's name is, who replaced Billy Crudup. And to be honest, he seamlessly goes into the role. Some people might not even notice that it was a recast, unless you're maybe an avid, Justice League watcher or something. You might not have noticed. But yeah, he's good in the roles in the time that we get him on screen. And just that family dynamic, especially in the Flashpoint timeline, I think is really well done as well. So it's pretty fun as well as sad when it comes to the more emotional side of things. Now, surprise characters, without even touching upon them. Now, some people might be like, hey, I've seen some spoilers online. I read them for some reason because I like getting spoiled before watching a movie. There's actually more. There's actually a couple of surprise characters which haven't been talked about, which I'm surprised by, because you think people just don't spoil one thing. They spoil everything. So I'm surprised they didn't bother mentioning some of the other surprise characters, whether it's cameos from other parts of the DCEU or DC world, or just Flash lore and stuff, which I wasn't expecting. I didn't realize a certain amount of these characters were in there. And I was like, as a Flash fan, you're like, oh, that person's there. And there's some people where they don't name them, be like, I'm pretty sure that's that person, because just to look at the character, the position they're in, or the place where they work, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're meant to be this character, but they don't name you. But in the credits, they might name you or something like that. But at least on screen, they don't go, hey, this is Bob Jones or whatever it is. So yeah, there's some surprise characters there, which was pretty fun. And the way that they use some of the characters in the Flashpoint timeline, I thought was really funny as well. There is a running joke, without spoiling specific things, there is a running joke to a other movie that might have been the inspiration to Flashpoint. So a certain movie in the 80s that was an inspiration for the Flashpoint storyline, or like is seen to be an inspiration for the Flashpoint timeline or the Flashpoint story. The running joke there is pretty funny. It's a bit, it's not, I don't want to say meta, but it's a bit niche, where it's more like you have to maybe know like specific behind the scenes stuff, but it's a funny running joke, and it wouldn't surprise me too much if like that's a trending thing afterwards and people start looking up on it. But yeah, that's a pretty fun thing throughout the movie. Now, I've just been sitting here talking about, characters, but what about the goddamn action? It's a Flash movie with Batman and, Zod's back and everything like that. I didn't even mention Zod, but yeah, we'll mention him here. So the first thing to say with the action is that the Flash powers are awesome. I think the most fun most fun that I was having throughout the film, and I was like, man, this is awesome. I think it's the best part, is when the Flash powers are happening, whether it's just him running, him in very like slowed down, like Flash time, if you want to put it. Just things like that. Now, this is still a Barry that's still learning his powers. So he's still like, I don't want to say he's like, an amateur, but he's still, you can still see that he's not fully the Flash. He's still developing them. And just to see like certain like cinematic uses of the powers is really cool, because the Justice League movies just showed him going fast for the most part. I know there was a time travel sequence in the Snyder Cut, but it's much different. Like the way that they do it in the movie is way different, and you'll see. This isn't a spoiler because it's been mentioned a lot of time in the promo material and stuff. There's a thing called the Chrono Bowl, and I won't specify what it looks like and what it exactly is, but I was wondering what the term Chrono Bowl meant. I was like, Chrono Bowl? What the hell does that mean? And when you watch, you're like, oh, Chrono Bowl. I know exactly what they mean now. And the way that they showed time travel in this movie is really cool and much different. And I'm very interested to see what people's reactions to it is, because it is much different. I'm not too sure if Andy Muschietti came up with it or was the VFX people. I'd assume Muschietti or maybe Christina Hodson, who wrote the movie, came up with it, just because it seems like a very planned thing. But yeah, the way they use time travel and showing like the timeline, like either changing or going back and forth, I think is really cool and a bit different. So I actually like the way they do it. It's much different than what we've seen before, whether it's in like the Flash TV show, for instance, or even some other time travel stuff as well. But yeah, the Flash powers are awesome. I'm excited to see what people think of them when they get to see them on the big screen. And the other thing with action is, I mentioned like Ben Affleck's Batman being really cool, but seeing Michael Keaton's Batman back in action with updated VFX, updated stunt choreography, everything like that, was awesome. It's sort of crazy. And as I said, when you leave this movie, I think a lot of people were like, God, I want to see more of Michael Keaton's Batman. I want a Michael Keaton, Batman 3, finish off the trilogy. Batman Returns, Batman Returns Again. I don't know, something like that. You'd want another Batman movie with Michael Keaton in it, just because the action with him is really, really cool. Now, the story of the movie, as I said before, concept of Flashpoint, but Man of Steel, like the Black Zero, or whatever it was called, the Black Zero, if anything it's called, from the events of Man of Steel, are a constant throughout the film. Now, I don't want to say this is a spoiler. I'm not going to even mention it, because I feel like this might be people go like, oh, this is meant to be a non-spoiler review. You're going to spoil something there. But I would say, like, when I've been asked, like I saw the movie and like people like, when you see it, can you like give your thoughts on it? And like, do you have to watch any other movies and stuff like that? It's been like a thought process before heading into the Flash. Can you just watch the Flash on its own? Do you have to watch all the DCU? Do you have to watch all the Batman movies? Do you have to watch, Man of Steel? I would say the main movie to watch before watching this, if you want to, is probably Batman, and probably just Batman 89 to learn Michael Keaton's Batman, and Man of Steel in second. But I don't think Man of Steel is actually a requirement, and you'll understand that when you watch the movie. It is a constant thing throughout the film, and it's a catalyst for, Barry having to do certain things throughout the film. But I would also say it's not a major part at the same time. I feel like they might be baiting people through the promo material, but at the same time, it's not like it's not there. It's just not as much as I thought it was going to be when I went into the film. But that might be maybe I was expecting more of it, but based off how much is shown in the trailers and stuff like that, you'd think there'd be more. But yeah, I guess that's for the individual, to decide whether there was enough of it or too less of it or too much of it. It's probably up to you when you watch it. Now, in regards to the end of the movie and what it does set up or doesn't set up, I'm not going to get into that because that just probably leans too much into spoilery stuff. But I left the movie satisfied. That was the thing. This movie's been such a long thing in the making and waiting, and one day it's happening, then it's delayed, then they've fired a director and hired a new writer. It just felt like it was constant stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, taking a break, stop, go with this film. And the fact it's finally here is insane. The fact that I got to see it on the big screen was just almost like a pipe dream. It was like a fever dream. It's like, is this really happening? And I think it was worth the wait. For me as a Flash fan, I think it was definitely worth the wait in regards to what they achieved on screen. Could it have been more flashy? Yes. And this is probably where I dive into my one flaw I will say, but I do have two flaws with the movie that sort of bugged me when I left. The first one is a spoiler, and it's more of like a moral thing, and you'll understand when you watch the film. I felt a bit weird about it being there. I was like, that doesn't feel right. It just felt a bit weird. So, and I'll talk about that in my spoiler review. And when you watch the film, you're probably like, oh, I know what he was talking about. When you watch the film, like, oh, that's probably what he's talking about. It just felt weird to me. The flaw I can tell you about is that this feels like a sequel. This feels like we've had an entire movie beforehand, and I'm not talking about Justice League, those two Justice League films. Like Barry's a minor key. He's like the least touched upon character, along with Aquaman in those two Justice League films. And I understand why. It's because the two solo movies that were meant to come out straight after that, like the Justice League coming out with Aquaman, which came out, and The Flash. But it's been 5 years since Aquaman. So this feels like a sequel. It feels like we spent an entire first movie with Barry maybe, doing certain things, learning his powers, whatever it is, fighting whoever it might be. And then something happens which maybe has him thinking about his mum more or something along those lines. It feels like there's a movie missing. Now, for me, I don't really mind too much because I know The Flash. But I feel like someone might jump in and not know The Flash at all and be like, am I missing a movie? Am I jumping into Spider-Man 2 without watching Spider-Man 1? It feels like that. Or am I watching The Dark Knight without watching Batman Begins? You're missing why a certain character is overly important or whatever it might be. So that's probably my biggest flaw from my first viewing. The first viewing is always a hard thing to go, unless it's something so obvious that just bugs you. But I think everything else is sort of minor, but it's upon a repeat viewing. Now, the only thing that might be a bit that people might not be happy with, which didn't bother me at all. It didn't bother me at all, but I did talk to someone else who's seen the film, and I thought I'd mention this. So it's not my opinion. It's just something else that someone had an issue with, and I thought I'd mention it just so it's out there. The person I talked to really liked the movie as well, but they weren't the biggest fan of the third act. I must say the third act is very quick, but for a couple of different reasons. It's The Flash, but he runs fast, so of course you'd think it'd be quick. But I was talking to someone where maybe they felt it skipped along too much. However, we don't know if scenes were taken out because this wasn't the final cut. So there might have been a scene or two removed to contain spoilers, and that might have been why the third act felt a bit weird for them. I didn't really notice it when I was actually watching it, but when they brought it up, I was like, okay, I can sort of understand how some people have an issue with it. But for me, I didn't. But that's up to the individual, I think. So just keep in mind, maybe the third act might be an issue to some, but for me, it wasn't. But for the person I did talk to, it just bugged them a bit, but didn't ruin the movie at all. They still loved the movie for what it was. But yeah, overall, I think this movie was well worth the wait. I think it's the most fun and the most hyped I've been throughout watching a DC film, I think, ever, potentially. Now, in regards to whether it's the best, that's obviously going to be very subjective, because some people think this movie is the best. Some people think the Suicide Squad's the best DC film, and then people say, oh no, it's The Dark Knight, and then someone's like, no, it's the Snyder Cut, whatever it is. So it's always going to be subjective what's the best. But man, I think I'd be watching this. I think I will be going to rewatch this movie more than a handful of times in the theater, just because it's so fun, and the pacing is really well done in my opinion as well. Very fast paced, which I don't know if that's just fitting for a movie that's about the Flash. I don't know, but yeah, I can't wait to see everyone else go see it, and we'll be doing our spoiler review whenever the movie does come out, or sometime after the movie comes out. That spoiler review will be coming out. We can talk about everything that's within this movie alongside the things I wasn't able to talk about because they were spoilery. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome to drop a like on it. Let me know in the comment section down below. Will you be seeing The Flash on the opening weekend? What are your expectations going into it? What's one thing you're looking forward to the most from it? Let me know in the comment section down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.